So we then get the video package which documents the history between Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan. So we see the end of WrestleMania 4 with Savage and Hogan and Elizabeth celebrating Savage's title win in the tournament. Then we see Hogan and Savage celebrating their win at SummerSlam and Savage's annoyance at Hogan celebrating with Liz. Then we see the Survivor Series and Hogan and Savage being the sole survivors in their match. We then see Saturday night's main event with Bossman and Akeem going after Liz and Savage making the save. Superstars then when Hogan saves Savage from an attack by the Twin Towers. We see the main event where Liz gets hurt and Hogan carries Liz to the back. Savage then slapping Hogan during the tag match that they're involved in at the time. And then afterwards backstage, Savage attacking Hulk Hogan. For me, so we spoke about this on the WrestleMania 4 show, for me remains the best story WWF have ever done. And I think commercially the story did the job. It did the business. As I said, this was the highest pay-per-view buy rate of any WrestleMania till WrestleMania 15. Bigger than WrestleMania 3, despite the big crowd, obviously, at WrestleMania 3. This was, in pay-per-view terms, a bigger show. Although I should also note that probably the pay-per-view audience was bigger as well at the time because more people had the technology in their homes. But also, in terms of this is a year-long story. They've sown the seeds even at WrestleMania 4, as Alex was talking about on the last show, saying, how he felt like Hogan had taken his spotlight. That all fed into this whole journey they were going to go on where Savage was jealous. They had a little bit of dissension at SummerSlam, a little bit more at Survivor Series, a little bit more again at the Royal Rumble. Then they had Saturday night's main event where they ultimately broke up. I just think it's brilliant. It's not super complicated, it's not super nuanced or even particularly detailed, but it really does the job and you know exactly what's going on throughout. But it's just excellent. I really love this, and this was I thought this was a bit of a rushed retelling of it, to be honest. I thought they could have done a little bit better of a job of this package, but overall I love the story.
Yeah, you're not going to get any arguments from me. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and it makes me, I think I've said this on the podcast before, but I can remember this happening. I can remember not necessarily watching it at the time, but I can remember going into, again, I'm going to go very Bristol here, Matt, so apologies. Me and Tinky went to the same primary school together, Noel Juniors. Yeah. And there was a shop around the corner from us that surely had a name, but everyone referred to it as the Mars shop because it had a big Mars logo outside on the thing. And they sold loads of magazines in there, including some naughty magazines, which I can remember looking at when I was a bit older. But I remember at the time going in there and getting told off for reading wrestling magazines because it was just around the corner from my grand's house. And I'd go in there and I can remember buying an issue of WWF magazine in there about the Mega Powers exploding. So it takes me straight back to that. And seeing all this footage, I absolutely adore it. And it's such an amazingly well-told story that I wish WWF would have the patience to tell now. I know they've got more content to fill and stuff like that, but still, it's absolute genius.
This is the blueprint for me. This is so simple and so perfect, and it works so well because actually at the end of WrestleMania 4, there aren't three more popular people anywhere in wrestling than Savage, Hogan, and Elizabeth. So to then take them on that journey over the course of the year is just magnificent.
I'm going to underplay it a little bit. Only to be fair, I just think I didn't see it at the time. So to be fair, I don't hold as much reverence perhaps as you guys or others do. Again, it was good, definitely good stuff. Definitely enjoyed it. It was definitely quite informative, the package as well. And yeah, like I said, it was good stuff. I can't say I've got that sort of affinity for it, but it was definitely good.
Well, I haven't either. I mean, I wasn't there at the time either, so don't get me wrong. I watched this entirely retrospectively. I just think when you look at it, you look at the fact they plotted it out right the way through that year. They have the WrestleMania in April, then they go to August SummerSlam, November Survivor Series, January Rumble. They're right the way round back here, and they obviously been planning this since before WrestleMania 4 because, as we said last time, that's the whole point of WrestleMania 4 is to set up Savage versus Hogan at WrestleMania 5. So it's a really genuinely well thought out bit of booking that and I think they've been aided by the fact that Hogan was off doing movies, so that he wasn't there all the time, so they could do it really gradually, but ultimately you just use what you've got, and they did really well. So then we get a backstage interview with Hulk Hogan conducted by Gene Okerlund. Hogan says he should have seen this thing coming because the mania was just always a little bit ahead of the madness. Hogan then says that Savage made him believe that he believed in the Three Commandments. He says Savage was eaten alive by jealousy and couldn't be the man Hulkamaniacs had wanted him to be. He says Savage is a cheap shot artist, and then Hogan went on about the foundations similar to the previous year, and he completely lost me again.
Hogan lost me on this. I got the start, and then the rest of it was just like, what is he rambling on about? He definitely does it with a shit ton of passion, I'll give you that, and his eyes double in size whenever he's doing his promos, but yeah, he just lost me at this point.
Yeah, it was exactly the same promo. Well, the last bit was the exact same promo as the year before. He's talking about the foundations of the Trump Plaza and Donald Trump needing to hold on to his arm when he saved. Oh, it was ridiculous. Dean Okerlund is next backstage with Elizabeth. She says that she'll be in a neutral corner for the main event, and from there she will continue to support both men. She says she can only pray that neither man will be injured. Tony Schiavone's then in the dressing room and says all the wrestlers have vacated the area to go watch the main event, and Sean Mooney in the crowd asks who will win the Hogan versus Savage match. They all say Hulk Hogan, but Mooney then claims that we have a split opinion amongst the fans.
The Elizabeth promo. Now, I'm as big an Elizabeth fan as anyone else is. Not quite as big as Stephen. I know he's a big Elizabeth fan. The lack of charisma in this promo is Linda McMahon-esque. I think you could probably try and say you could claim that it's her being nervous and concerned and stuff like that about it. But it takes her about 10 to 15 seconds after each sentence to remember what she's going to say and then deliver it. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, but that's why she didn't really talk. She barely ever spoke. You know, I mean, there's nearly every promo that she's about to speak, Randy Savage just interrupts and makes sure she doesn't speak. Probably for this exact reason, because she can't.
Yeah, it's dreadful. It's a really bad promo.
So we get to the main event. So we've got Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight title. A match that goes for 18 minutes. And what happens is that Savage hits the big elbow from the top, but Hogan kicks out, hulks up. He then hits the big boot and the leg drop and gets the pin to win the world title. Matt, what do you think of this?
This is another example of the so-called sort of Hogan formula, but my God, when it works, it works. And this is a prime example of it working. Match quality-wise, it might not necessarily have been the best thing that you've ever seen. You know, there definitely are better matches out there. To be honest, you could argue there's better matches on this show. But this felt like what you paid to see. This was your big fight feel. And particularly for me, being an MMA fan, I live for that big fight feel where it's two people you really want to see go at it and you really care about the result. And that's what this felt like that completely. Randy Savage, I thought, was a fantastic heel, from running away early at the start to grabbing Elizabeth and putting her in front of him at one point, which, my God, did that piss the people off. So that was great. Hogan is just the best bloody babyface. And, but by the time that, he hit the big leg and he won, the pose down, which, almost went on comically long, at the end of the show. But the fact that it went on for that long made you think, wow, this is a big deal. The true hero has really done it. And I was thinking the entire time watching that sort of pose down, wow, this feels like a really big moment. So I really enjoyed this. This was probably one of the best things on the show.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether to make this my match of the night or not, and I think it's really good. I just think that the Rude Warrior match just shaded it for me. Tom, what did you think?
I think this match is really, really good. The things that you said, Matt, are true. Like, I like Macho Man kind of like posing at the beginning, like looking like he's going to do something, then like carrying away is great. Hogan does a little bit of chain wrestling at the beginning, which we don't see very often. Like, kind of gets him into works the arm, works his way around the back, and does a drop toe hold into a front face lock. And I was like, wow, I've not seen that very often from Hulk Hogan. And it's a bit clunky, so there's probably a reason why. But it's pretty back and forth, to be honest. The heat on Macho Man is brilliant, especially the bit where he comes out and berates Liz in front of everyone, which is probably a bit close to home, if we're being honest. Though it's probably a bit of an insight into how their relationship actually was, unfortunately. But it gets a lot of heat from the crowd. But again, Macho Man, he kind of goes down the steamboat route with it, with the double axe handle off the top rope onto Hogan, who's on the railing, and starts working over his neck loads, which I quite liked. But ultimately, you know what you're going to get. You know what the inevitable is. The elbow drop that Macho Man hits on Hogan from the top is absolutely spectacular. He flies so far and puts so much into it, and it looks incredible. But then obviously Hogan kicks out and hulks out and does it, what I thought was a disappointingly, he doesn't even hit him with a slam or anything, or it's not even that many punches. It's literally like 2 punches, the big kick and the leg drop for the win. I would have liked a little bit more offense from Hogan to make it seem like Macho Man was a slightly bigger deal than he presented in this. But this is a very good match and would be probably my match of the night had it not been for the Powers of Pain versus Demolition.
Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I think I do agree with you at the end of the match in terms of Hogan maybe giving Savage something a little bit extra. But saying that again, and I go back to this point I made last week, it's not about Savage. They're not in the business of trying to create anyone else or even try and maintain anybody else. It's all about Hogan. They don't care about anything else. They just want Hogan to come out looking the star, having overcome the most recent nemesis that he's got, and move him on to the next thing. That's all they're interested in, and that's what they do. Hogan wins. I will take a little bit of umbrage with the comments about Hogan and his ability to wrestle. So I think when he needed to, Hogan could. And also, Hogan was very, very clever at understanding what a crowd wanted, depending on what market he was in. WWF has always been a punch-kick promotion. Okay, always has been. Even during John Cena, who couldn't punch, even during that time, it still was a punch-kick promotion, and it still is to this day. There's a reason why Roman Reigns is the biggest star, and his main move is the Superman punch. It's a punch-kick promotion. Always has been, probably always will be. And especially in the 80s, the fans didn't really want anything else. You know, I've said this before. I've seen Madison Square Garden shows from like the late 70s and early 80s, and San Martino's on top. He does the punch and kicks. That's it. Doesn't do anything else. The fans eat it up. They're going mad for him all the way through. The opening matches, wrestlers like Eduardo Carpentier on the show does lots of like quite technical flippy stuff. Fans just aren't interested at all. Just doesn't interest them one bit. And Hogan, when he went to Japan, could wrestle and knew what he had to do. But here in WWF, he knew what he was about, and it was about punches and kicks, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't criticizing him for not doing it very often, because I've read, but I've never seen any of the Japan stuff, obviously, but I've heard that he was able to do some really good work over there as well, where that kind of stuff is appreciated. But I think it looks a little bit clunky and rusty when he does it, probably because he doesn't do it very often.
Yeah, he does. It's definitely in his WWF run. He's left it behind, but he was capable. That's the point. He was capable of doing things that were a bit more technical. He just didn't do it in WWF because the fans didn't require of him. In fact, they wanted him to do the punches and kicks. That's all they really wanted from him. It's a good match. It's a really good match. Savage is great. Hogan's really decent. It's one of the best matches. I think it's probably the best WrestleMania match other than... See, this is where I'm kind of I feel a little bit tongue-in-cheek about the Warrior Rude match. I just did enjoy that most, but I think most people would argue this is the best match on the show, and also is probably the best WrestleMania match since Savage versus Steamboat, second best match in WrestleMania history by this moment in time, and it's definitely right up there. Obviously, this is the bit for me where they get to the end of this journey that Hogan's been on, really since the beginning of his first title run. Going back to what I've said over the last couple of episodes, from WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 4 into WrestleMania 5, they've been building to this match for the last year, but within that, it's felt like all part of the same journey. It's not felt like there's been a stop point and then we've moved on to the next feud. It feels like we've gone from Andre to the tournament to Savage completely organically and almost blended in together, so that one's automatically led to the other, rather than just Hogan's overcome Andre, then moved on to Savage. That's not how it's gone. They really layered the two over each other and moved this whole journey together. And I think they kind of lose that after this point. I don't think he's still on that journey, but Savage remains on the journey now. So his journey really began at WrestleMania 4, you could argue, and he now goes on that journey right the way through to WrestleMania 7 and the match where he has with the Warrior. So even there's still that kind of organic feel to the way a wrestler's going, and that makes more sense because Hogan, by this point, WWF were now in the business of looking for the next big star, and they had it on this show, but it wouldn't be revealed until our next episode, which will be WrestleMania 6, of course.